Equity, equality. You hear these words thrown around all the time, right? And they sound, well, pretty much the same. But what if I told you that the gap between them isn't just a tiny detail? What if it's the key to understanding why some systems work for everyone and others just don't? Today, we're diving into that difference.
So let's just start with this one simple question. Think about it for a second. Is treating every single person the exact same way always the fair thing to do? On the surface, it sounds right, but as we're about to see, the answer is a whole lot more complicated.
All right, so to really get to the bottom of that question, we first need to get on the same page. We have to clearly define what we're talking about when we say equality and when we say equity. They're not the same thing, not at all.
Okay, first up, equality. Now, this one is all about sameness. The classic example is this. Imagine 3 kids, all different heights, trying to watch a baseball game over a fence. Equality comes along and gives each of them the exact same box to stand on. The tall kid can see perfectly now. The medium kid can kind of see. But the shortest kid still can't see a thing. So everyone got the same treatment. But did it actually work? Not for everyone.
Now, let's look at it through the lens of equity. Equity is all about fairness. It takes a step back and asks, hey, what does each person actually need to succeed? So back at the fence, equity sees the different heights. It gives the shortest kid a tall box, the medium kid a shorter box, and realizes the tallest kid doesn't need a box at all. And now, everyone can see the game. The resources were different, but the outcome is equal.
So let's just break it down super simple. Equality is focused on the inputs. It asks, did everyone get the same stuff? Equity, on the other hand, is focused on the outcome. It asks, did everyone have a fair chance to succeed? One's about process, the other's about results.
And here's the thing, if you think this is some new, trendy debate, you couldn't be more wrong. This tension between applying a rule the same way for everyone versus doing what's actually just, well, that's a conversation that's been at the very heart of our legal systems for centuries. This quote from the legal jurist F.W. Maitland just nails it. Equity wasn't invented to throw the law out the window. It was created to fulfill it, to make it whole. Think of it like a patch or an update for the legal system, a way to handle situations where just following the strict rules would lead to a totally unfair result. And I mean, this goes way, way back. We're talking Aristotle in ancient Greece, pointing out the difference between giving everyone the same number of things and giving them what's proportional to their need. Fast forward to medieval England, and they literally created special courts called courts of conscience just to deal with this. And then, get this, in 1615, the king himself decreed that if there was a conflict between the normal law and equity, equity wins. This has been a long, long journey toward achieving real justice.
And out of all that history, we got these really cool common sense principles. Things like equity will not suffer a wrong to be without a remedy, which basically means if something's wrong, there has to be a way to make it right. Or he who comes to equity must come with clean hands, meaning you can't ask for fairness if you've been acting unfairly yourself. But my favorite is this one. Equity looks to the intent rather than to the form. It's about the spirit of the law, not just the letter.
Okay, so that's the history. But what does this look like today? What happens when a modern system is designed to be totally equal, giving everyone the same voice, but it's still not working? Let's take a look at a real-world case study from Columbus, Ohio. So, researchers looked at 4 very different neighborhood commissions. On paper, things seemed okay. People were showing up, participating, but underneath the surface, there was a ton of conflict and frustration. And the big question was, why? And here's what they found. The issue wasn't a lack of equality. I mean, everyone had a seat at the table, right? The problem was the rules of the game. The system was so rigid, it completely failed to acknowledge the history of the place. Deep injustices like redlining, which was a practice that literally denied services to people based on where they lived. That history doesn't just go away. The researchers boiled it down to these 2 completely different ways of seeing the world clashing with each other. The dominant frame was what they called the strict father model. Think of it as the rule book, very top-down, competitive, focused on efficiency. But that approach was steamrolling another worldview, the nurturing parent model, which is all about collaboration, communication, and seeing problems as something the community has to solve together. And this quote from one of the commissioners, wow, it just says it all.
You can't just ignore decades of struggle and expect everyone to play nice by a new set of rules. People were stuck in fight mode because the system, which was supposed to be equal, was completely ignoring their lived reality.
Okay, so that's a pretty big problem. But it's not all doom and gloom. Let's flip the script and look at what happens when you lead with equity. When you design a solution from the ground up to be fair, not just the same. Let me introduce you to Project Brotherhood in Chicago. This wasn't just another clinic. No, they got smart. They asked, what are the real barriers keeping Black men from getting the healthcare they need? And then they built a solution around the answers. Free care, evening hours for guys who work, fatherhood classes, and my personal favorite, they trained a local barber to be a health advocate. Genius! They met people where they were. That is equity.
So, did it work? Oh, you better believe it worked. We're talking a 575% increase in weekly medical visits. Let that sink in. That's not a typo. By ditching the one-size-fits-all model and choosing an equitable approach, the result wasn't just a little better, it was completely transformative.
That is so inspiring, but it leaves us with a big question. How can we do this? How do we start to apply this kind of thinking in our own work, in our own communities? Well, thankfully, there's a really powerful framework we can use.
It all starts with a huge shift in how we think about leadership. You know, the traditional model is top-down. It's about control, order, and hitting performance metrics. But equity leadership is totally different. It's inside out. It values listening, building relationships, and above all else, learning. It's about being willing to adapt instead of just forcing your plan on everyone else. And it boils down to this really powerful 3-step process. See, engage, and act. First, you have to truly see the system for what it is, warts and all. Then you engage. And this means you stop talking and you start listening, especially to the people who are most affected by the problem. And only then, after you've really seen and engaged, do you act. Not with some grand, perfect plan, but by experimenting, learning, and building solutions that actually address the root of the problem.
And that brings us full circle, right back to that fence and those 3 kids.
The difference between equality and equity is the difference between giving everyone the same box and giving everyone the right box. So the question is no longer for me, it's for you. Now that you see the difference, look around your world, your job, your community, your school. Where is the fence built just a little too high for some people? And what's the first step you can take to change that?